Dorothy Must Die, Chapter 34. With no time to worry about what was down there, I stepped through the door and plunged down the twisting stairway. I felt like I was running for my life, trusting my feet to find their purchase against the treacherous stone stairs. They didn't let me down. Knox had trained me well. The door slammed shut behind me, and everything suddenly went completely black. Able to see exactly nothing, I stopped and looked up and waited for my eyes to adjust. They didn't. I decided to light my knife up again, finding it even easier the second time than the first, and held it aloft. Or tried to. I hit a rock a few inches above my head. I climbed back up the staircase and examined the back of the door, but it didn't have any handles or buttons. I had no idea how to open it back up. Well, I thought, at least it'll keep the crows out. Plus, I might be trapped. With no other direction to go but down, and my only my knife to light the way, I descended. When the steps finally ended, I looked around, the glow of my knife lighting up an entire room. The Scarecrow's House of Horrors was almost as I had imagined it would be, except worse. There were 2 long metal tables set up with horrific instruments like the ones I'd seen in his room, and a metal chair with restraints on the arms and the legs. I was pretty sure that's what Maud had been strapped into yesterday. So where was she now? Next to the chair was a square, squat machine with a bunch of circular dials and gauges on it. It was attached to a long leather tube. I didn't want to know what that was. Against the wall was a huge shelf lined with big glass jars, the kind that Gert kept her dried herbs and potion ingredients in. But these jars weren't filled with mandrake root or nightshade dust. Many of them held what looked like brains, floating around in some kind of glowing green liquid. I stepped closer. They were pulsing. They were still alive, I realized in horror. It wasn't just brains. There was other body parts, too. Ears and hands and tiny little white wings. From baby monkeys? I shuddered. I turned my attention to a wooden drafting table, which was papered with sketches and anatomical diagrams. There were monkeys, kalidas, a chicken, and a few other animals I didn't even recognize. I tore my eyes away and began looking for signs of actual life. "Hello?" I called out. "Is anyone here? Maud?" I wasn't really expecting an answer, and then I heard a noise, a barely audible moan coming from behind a metal door I hadn't noticed in the back of the room, on the other side of a boxing machine. The moan came again, louder this time, and I knew that was, as afraid as I was, there was someone or something on the other side who had it a lot worse than I did. I held my breath before opening the door, picturing all the terrible things I might find. The next room was smaller and filled entirely with rusty metal gurneys. They were caked in dried blood, but at least there were no bodies in them. Then I saw her. In the back of the room, a tiny monkey in a frilly pink dress was cowering in a metal cage that was barely big enough to contain her. Feathers from her twisted, mangled wings poked through the bars. "Maud?" I asked gently. "Is that you?" She looked up at me with scared, big brown eyes. They looked like Ollie's, only minus the mischief. But the rest of her was not at all like Ollie. Her head was freshly shaved and her arms were wrapped in cloth bandages. I crouched down next to her. "I'm here to get you out," I said, in the gentlest voice as possible. "Who?" she croaked wearily. "I'm Amy. Ollie sent me." "Ollie?" Her eyes filled with momentary hope before clouding over again. "No," she said. He would never. Why would he help me when I was so terrible to him?" "Why wouldn't he?" I asked. "He was right about everything. I should have listened." Her eyes rolled back into her head. "Maud," I said, snapping my fingers in her face. "Can you move? We need to get out of here." She nodded, but otherwise she didn't budge. She was out of it. I'm pretty sure she thought I was a dream. I started looking around for the keys to her cage, then realized I didn't need them. The Scarecrow would know Maud had escaped, so screw it. I bashed the lock with my dagger until it broke open. The banging seemed to wake Maud up a bit, and her eyes focused on me. I leaned in and helped her out of her prison and onto the ground. But when I tried to lift her into my arms to carry her, she brushed my hands away. "I can walk," Maud said. As an afterthought, she reached over her shoulder and felt for her wings, like she had forgotten whether or not she still had them. As she brushed her fingers through the matted feathers, I couldn't tell if she was relieved or disappointed. She didn't say anything. She just reached up and grabbed my hand and hobbled alongside with me, past the gurneys and through the door into the main lab. I could hear the crows outside, their mad cacaws echoing down the passageway. We weren't going to be able to leave that way. "Is there another way out of here?" I asked. Maud either didn't hear my question or chose to ignore it. Her eyes filled with rage. She was staring at the Scarecrow's machine. "Did he use that on you?" I asked, my voice somber. Slowly, she nodded. "Hell with it. Why stop wrecking stuff now?" I walked to the machine and shoved it over. It crashed loudly on the ground, its gears spilling out and spiraling across the floor like loose change. I looked back at Maud. "He'll only fix it," she said. "I know," I replied, "but I'd love to see the look on his stupid straw face when he finds it." Her cracked lips twitched, not quite smiling, but I thought I saw a spark of happiness in her tired eyes. "What did he do to you?" I asked. "What is the Scarecrow building down here?" I don't remember." She put a hand up to her shaved head, her eyes squeezed shut in pain. I couldn't tell if it was physical or mental. Did it hurt to think? Or did it hurt to remember what had been done to her? "He drained me." Maud knuckled the back of her head. "He's trying to make himself smarter." I thought of Ozma and wondered if maybe the Scarecrow had drained her brain too. "But why?" I asked, looking all around at all the equipment, the wall of specimens. It had to be something more than the Scarecrow having brain envy. Nothing went on in this place that didn't somehow benefit Dorothy. He's going to... She drifted off, going hazy. And then suddenly the birds went silent. "What's gotten into you? Be quiet, you dreadful beasts!" I heard the Scarecrow shouting at the ravens. He was back. The fire must have been put out. We were out of time. "Oh no," Maud moaned. Her knees went weak, and I felt her almost collapse next to me. I grabbed her by the shoulders. "Tell me there's another way out of here." She shook her head, her eyes drifting toward the staircase. "Only through there." Trapped. My only option was magic. "Take my hand," I told Maud, trying to sound confident. "I'm getting us out of here." I had never gotten that comfortable with the travel spell that Mombi had taught me, but at this point I had to risk it. It was dangerous. Gert and Knox had told me time and time again that I should never travel without clearly visualizing my destination. Otherwise, I was liable to end up teleporting myself into the middle of a brick wall. I closed my eyes and tried to picture the royal gardens. I'd never actually been out there, only glimpsed them that day when I saw the lion pop the eye out from the guard. What did I remember? The sunflowers. A spiraling bed of overgrown sunflowers where the lion had been napping. I pictured the flowers, but it wouldn't do to travel into them, not unless I wanted petals and stems sticking out of me. I imagined the space directly above the flowers, the cool night air, the moonlight, the royal gardens. I focused on the details that would be below me, imagining the empty space where we'd travel. It could be the most powerful spell I had ever cast, and the most important. My dagger throbbed in my hand. It wanted to stay and fight. Not a sound strategy, but that's the kind of institutional advice you get from a magic object that's primary purpose is stabbing. Distantly, I heard the Scarecrow shuffling down the steps. He was close, but I was already imagining myself far away. "Hold on to me," I whispered. Even my own voice sounded as if it came down a tunnel, the magic building up within me. I felt Maud squeeze my hand, and then I let go. Not of her, but of this place. I heard a whooshing in my ears, felt the magic pulling me apart, and then we were gone.